course of the last year, there was an HBO special that was made that took hold of the imagination and the hearts of many. It went on to win an Emmy in terms of TV shows. It was one of what started off as a young girl growing into adulthood, and perhaps now you have seen it. The story's name simply Temple Grandin. Because it was on HBO, I think that many missed out. But it holds an incredible story and perhaps a way for us to enter into the scripture text for today. You see, in brief, Temple Grandin was born as a young girl with autism, back at a time when people didn't know what autism was or how it was expressed or how to care for those who were living with autism. But much like the story of Helen Keller before her, struggling with her loss of sight, here in this story, there is a mother who refuses to give up. She loves her daughter so deeply, caring for all that she is and all that she might become. And finally, in the closing scene of the movie, you see Temple Grandin in the early 1980s up in front of a group of parents and teachers, educators, who are trying to figure out how to cope with, how to care for their loved ones, their students who are living with autism. And Temple Grandin has an incredible quote where she says, "I see the world differently. I see the world differently." And at this point, of course, the mother who has been on this journey year after year, day after day, is in tears, both reflecting on all that has led to that point, but also now, where her daughter is, living a life richly, fully, seeing the world differently. As we come to the font today, and as we come to these scripture stories, we encounter one who sees the world differently. You see, Jesus of Nazareth, who comes to the River Jordan and is immersed in the water by John, is one who is born differently from others. We have been living and dwelling in the Christmas stories, and we know that from early on, the significance is that he is going to be different. He's not going to be the same as all of the other children who run around the streets of Nazareth. He's not going to look at scriptures in the same way that the rabbis are arguing and debating scriptures and technicalities. He is not one who is going to sit back with the systems of his day and let them go on as normal. Rather, this is one whom God has anointed, who sees the world differently, and also sees the possibilities for us differently. This one who comes to John is immersed in a promise that harkens back over the ages to the very beginning of creation. Sometimes we wonder how the texts get tied together in the lectionary. To have this one text of creation in which God is speaking over the waters, over the cosmos. And then this voice of the same God speaking over one individual, one child. How are the two tied together? We understand as we think through this, as we live into it, that it is a voice that continually calls for creation and recreation, a voice that claims, that lays claim to our world and then to each of our lives. Through, for us, this one who journeyed in Nazareth, in Galilee, who comes to the River Jordan. This is a voice of deep love and compassion, of a God who is all around us, and who comes and dwells with us. Not just far off in some distant universe, but here and now. It is for that reason that I ask the children to go to you, to make the sign of the cross, to remind you of this water and of this voice that echoes over us. In what ways are we being illumined today? How is God saying in our lives, let there be light? How is God creating in our lives? Perhaps there is a transition in work or a newness in how we are approaching our life, whether it is in what we are doing in our day-to-day living, in our place of employment, in our retirement, and God providing an insight or a new way of living into that. Perhaps it's in the midst of chaos, as we find here in the Genesis story, where things just aren't working in a relationship or in the way that we envision things moving forward and making our plans. And the voice echoes over us saying, let there be light. Let there be a newness of being, a promise in how you are living and dwelling. And this voice of love that resounds over Jesus and continues to pour out over us. You are my beloved, my child. With you I am well pleased. How hard is it for us at times to hear those words? It's easy for us to think about the ways that we don't quite measure up, that we don't quite get it right. And yet this voice sounds. You are my beloved. Are you willing to allow that voice to sound over you? For the water to be poured over you? That no matter what has been yesterday, or the struggles that you have had, or the brokenness that you have experienced, that there is a God who dwells over and around you, embracing